Welcome to the newest episode of the Citizen Effect podcast. I don't know, we're on like 13 or 14 or 17. I don't know anymore. But this is the next episode. And I am Keith Whiddon, one half of Erase My Arrest and 100% of Whiddon Criminal Defense. Joined today again by
Devin Jones, one half Erase My Arrest and partner at EOM Young Law. And Keith is right. I think he has to take his shoes off to count to these now.
I do.
So, well, thankfully here in Louisiana, we don't wear shoes frequently.
Well, I just cut the toes, in that I don't like that toe cap on Converse, so I just cut that off.
It's easier on me. It's the Crocs. They just the knife goes through them like butter, the styrofoam. So you don't have to worry about that.
It's all about the airflow on the toes, you know.
Airflow on the toes.
I think we might have somebody from a place more rural than us, and that is Brian Hilverda.
Brian, welcome to the show. It's been a long time coming. I must admit that, yes, we did podcast ghost you the first time that you were scheduled to appear. But that was back whenever we were still trying to figure this whole podcasting thing out. But go ahead, introduce yourself to the audience. Let them know where they can find you on the internet and on social. And let's jump into it.
All right. So I am Brian Hilverda, coming to you from Twin Falls, Idaho, a small town in the south central part of Idaho. Most well known for a large canyon that Evel Knievel tried to jump in the 70s and failed miserably. But his jump is still there on the canyon edge, and you can walk right up on it. I am one half of Hilverda McCrae here in Twin Falls. My partner Steve McCrae is the other half, who you guys know. You should get him on the podcast sometime. And,
absolutely.
And you can find us at hilverdamccraelaw.com. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We as well have our own podcast. The podcast is called I Fought the Law, and it is a lot of fun and really kind of stupid. So, but we have a good time doing it. And so that's us.
Well, let's let the good times roll and jump into it. So, Brian, you have quite the interesting history of how you got to where you are today and things like that. So go ahead and tell everybody kind of where you grew up, how you grew up, and why that makes you the lawyer that you are today.
Yeah, so I've got kind of interesting past. I grew up with a dad as an FBI agent, and so we moved around a bunch. I grew up as a little kid in the Bay Area in California, and I grew up in a very very active Orthodox Mormon family. And so we were very into the church and that sort of thing. Ultimately, we ended up here in Twin Falls, Idaho, which is where my dad was originally from, and the FBI wanted to open an office here. And so he jumped at that opportunity and came up here, and this is where I went to high school, went to college at Brigham Young University down in Provo, Utah, Mormon school, and then did what most Mormon boys do, is go on a mission to Panama for a couple of years and spoke Spanish, and then returned back to BYU, met my wife, got married, and we started working in Utah in Salt Lake, and I was working for an insurance company. Decided that I really liked that work, just really hated insurance companies, and so I wanted to be on the other side of it. So we quit that job after 4 or 5 years, went to law school up in University of Idaho, and was lucky enough to land a job that just sort of fell in my lap from my hometown, doing exactly what I wanted to do, fight insurance companies. So we moved our family back down here by my folks. And then about 10 years ago or so, I really started struggling with some of the things that the Mormon Church was doing, particularly with the way they treated people who were different than them, and their opposition to gay marriage, and a bunch of other things that sort of started me on a path of really questioning what it was I believed. And when I could no longer square that with my Mormon faith, I left it. And now I look like this. So It's led me to an interesting journey of one. I kind of feel like my life has been primed of, my wife calls it speaking truth to power.
Yeah.
Whether that's, helping the little guy, fight the insurance company, or whether it's, sticking up for marginalized people that don't fit into a, classic Mormon culture, that sort of thing. All of that has that sort of sense of justice and helping the little guy has really driven me my whole life. I've been in 2 fights in my life. They were both in the 5th grade, and both of them stemmed from somebody picking on my friend, and I jumped in. And my parents have always just teased me that, like, I don't care too much if somebody wrongs me, but if they wrong, somebody I'm looking out for, it makes me mad and I get all riled up. So thankfully, I haven't thrown any more punches since the 5th grade, but it really did instill in me throughout my life just wanting to stick up for the little guy.
So what is one of the most meaningful cases that you've handled where you had to stick up for the little guy and the odds were against you?
Oh, wow. Yeah. So we've done, we've been able to do, my practice is mostly personal injury, and dealing with insurance companies and that sort of thing. And there's a lot of great insurance company stories. They love to take advantage of people. They love to, especially people who they don't think will stick up for themselves. But I think my favorite, I have a really, I've got a couple of fun ones, but I'll start with the more serious one. We represented a family they were from a town called Bonner's Ferry, and it's up in the panhandle of Idaho, about 15, 20 miles from the Canadian border. So way up north. It's about a 12-hour drive from my town. And
Wow.
they had a nice house out in the middle of the forest, nobody around. And it was a couple that had been married for a while, and they were raising about 4 grandkids because they had a daughter who struggled with some addiction problems and things like that. And so they took this on them, and were raising this family, and a couple of those kids were special needs. And so they were going into Spokane, Washington, the next biggest town, or the biggest city near them where they could get treatment. And they got a call in the middle of the night that their house had burned down out in the forest. And obviously it was a total loss. So all their possessions, their home that they had saved for was gone. And their insurance company came in and said, "You guys started this fire. You did this for the insurance money." And being in Spokane, Washington was just to cover up. So you could have an alibi, essentially, that we think you started this fire, so we're not paying for anything. And some of the reasoning for that was that they had, they filled out all the forms for making claims, and they put on there that they had, like 3 handguns and about 4 rifles and a couple of shotguns. And they're like, "Look," and these adjusters were like from big cities back east. They looked at this and they go, like, "Come on, nobody has that many guns." And we're like, "No, this is Idaho. Like,
Yeah.
That's a conservative amount of guns.
Yes, that is very reasonable." And those people believe they're the front line of defense against the Canadians should the Mounties decide to cross the border.
It's one of those places where if you don't have one, they give you one.
Right, exactly. There was a few other funny things like that where they just didn't understand these people and their culture, and they drug them through everything to the point that they ended up having to load up in their car with what little they had, drive to the mom's sister in California. She had a little 1-bedroom home, and all now 7 people were living there. because they didn't have anywhere else to go. And they called us up one day. They had actually gone to a lawyer in California, and he had searched for, insurance lawyers in Idaho, got them in touch with us, and we went through the whole process. And this company was terrible, just terrible. And they treated them horribly. They and the way they handled the claim was just awful, but they knew that they could get away with it. These folks were not incredibly intelligent. They hadn't had a whole lot of schooling. They were very simple folks with huge hearts, and they didn't know how to navigate this process. But here's the big but, is they were a little different. And of course they were people of simple means and not a whole lot of education, and lived in the middle of nowhere. And so we actually went to trial on that after years of litigating it. And we lost. And it was just devastating for this family. And in talking with jurors after the verdict, they said, what was it? And they said, well, everything the insurance company did seemed really bad, but your folks were just kind of weird. And so we thought maybe they might have had some involvement just because they came across weird. And I'm not going to lie, our clients were weird. Like, they were a little socially awkward and not very well spoken, and that sort of thing. And that's always tough with juries. And you guys know better than anybody doing your criminal work. Juries can do anything, and they can on any little fact, and that can be very, decisive for them, even though the attorneys and the judge and everybody else aren't really focusing on that. But they honed in on a couple of things, and that just was the decision maker for them. And this family was just devastated, and I was devastated. Like, I had poured my heart and soul for about 3 years in this case. And they're like, what can we do? And so I just started diving in on what we could do. And we actually filed a post-trial motion with the court to set aside the jury verdict, because there was no actual evidence that these folks had done anything wrong. It was just a company alleging it. Like, they had brought in a cause and origin guy on the fire, which was inconclusive. They said they're lying on their forms about the personal property that they had, with things like guns and stuff like that. And but they hadn't even gone to the scene to see if any remnants of that was left. And the company really screwed this up. And so we ended up filing a pretty heady motion with the court, post-trial motion. And this was federal court up in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. And just pointing out all, where all the weight of the evidence was. And we knew it was a long shot, but the court actually came back and turned it around.
Nice. Yeah.
The judge commented that he'd been on the bench for a long time. In fact, he just retired a little bit ago. And he said, I've been on this bench, the federal bench, for about 30 years. And he goes, I've done this one time before, and that's it. And I get them filed all the time. But he goes, you guys were in the right. There is no evidence to have treated this family this way, to deny the policy benefits. And ultimately, the company ended up having to pay out, take care of our clients. And I mean, that obviously, we want to win. We want to get good results for our clients. But in that situation, winning literally meant getting their lives back, which, I know you guys appreciate in the criminal realm. When you win, people literally get their freedom back. Yep. For these folks, it was very, very similar, very meaningful to be able to help out these folks and the kids. And these are folks that would have never been able to navigate this process by themselves. It was a good fight, and it was a tough one to take when we lost. But I was really proud of the way we bounced back and were able to still stick up for the little guy even after pretty significant setback.
Well, you had the odds stacked against you in two ways, because you had the insurance company that had denied you, and and then your clients that came across as odd to the jury lose on that. So you've got the glimmer of hope is small, because like you said, the post-trial memo that's a long shot if there ever was one.
That's a Hail Mary for sure.
Yes.
And people don't understand what goes into a jury trial, what these jurors look at. I tried one November of 19, and I told my client before we went in there, I said, if you smile or crack or do anything, I swear to you, it'll be me and you in the next case, because I'm going to shoot you in the leg. Do not. And he said, why? And I said, because these jurors, they become a superhuman being. They pick everything apart. They used to ask us when I was a prosecutor, they'd ask us after the trial, they'd say, why do you always look at your phone after you say this? They look at everything. And it's stuff that's not relevant.
Yeah.
But they look at all of it, and they become this almost sleuth of an investigative thing that they want to know everything about everything. And
Right.
what they make their decisions on is so limited. Keith had a trial the other day. I said, be sure to remind the jurors that the judge can't dismiss a criminal case in Louisiana. Because a lot of them will say, well, I'd love to believe what he's saying, but wouldn't the judge just dismiss it if it was like that? Well, no. Under the Constitution, he can't dismiss it.
Right.
And unfortunately, that was not a good result for my client and I. But still, it's amazing how people don't realize those sorts of things. And even my clients that are going through things right now and are in jail, they still think that they're waiting on something to happen that's just going to, they're going to dismiss the case. It doesn't happen that way. So there's a lot of separation of, fiction on TV and everywhere else from reality. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Now, the interesting story, when I met y'all in Atlanta, because that's where we met, was Atlanta. Yeah. Not only interesting backstory, so over 2/3 of my law partners are still Mormon. And Brian and Stephen are former Mormon members, or LDS. Yeah. But we had a lot of points of agreement in places, and just we knew things. And it was funny because my actual law partner, Oral, he spent time in Paraguay, and you were in Panama.
Yep.
Y'all got to talk about how maybe you didn't get the luck of the draw on the pick because y'all got Paraguay and Panama.
Yeah, my good friends were going to Paris and Barcelona and some of those. Yeah,
Orm's brother got to go to Japan, and Orm got to go to Paraguay, the only South American country that has no water border. It is completely inland. But what I thought was fun was the story of how you and Stephen became law partners. And it was just interesting. If you'll tell the viewers, it's a great story about how just friendship and opportunity, and you're like, well, let's do it.
Yeah. No, so it's funny. When I went to law school, I was a very active practicing Mormon with my little Mormon family. And I went to my first year at U of I in Moscow, Idaho. And then the second year rolls around, and you know how they assign you like carols in the desks in the library. And they had a set of 6 that they had assigned 5 of us to, and there was an empty spot right next to me. And so Steve, my partner, had transferred from Michigan because he had grown up in Idaho and he didn't want to be in Michigan anymore. So he ended up transferring to University of Idaho, and he didn't know anybody. And he's like, well, I guess I'll just take that empty one there. And it ended up being right next to me. And we just kind of hit it off. We're very similar people. We both liked a lot of the same music, liked a lot of the same things, liked to go mountain biking. We loved to cook. Steve and I actually became pretty good friends because we'd get together and cook stuff for our wives and family and stuff. And that friendship just kind of blossomed. He was actually, we were in the same Mormon communities are kind of divvied up in what they call wards. And so if you're in a certain geographic location, you go with your ward to this building, and that's where you worship. And we were in the same ward up there. He actually was like the little kids leader over my kids who were pretty young at the time. He didn't even have kids at the time. And we were buddies, played a lot of ping pong. We had a lot of fun together. And I ended up at my job in Twin Falls at another firm, coming back to my hometown, and he ended up clerking for a judge down here, and then anticipated after he did that 1 year clerkship, he'd go back to where he was from, which is more Western Idaho. And he ended up loving it down here so much he stayed. And so we were both at firms, but still friends. And I was happy we were in the same geographic area. And then we had gone to a conference together in McCall, Idaho, or was it Coeur d'Alene? It was one of those places, a nice, beautiful resort town. And we were driving around, and he was talking about he had just gone out on his own, and he was really busy. And he said, I think I need to expand, and I don't know if I need to hire somebody or get a partner. And I said, hey, we should do Hilverda McRae. And he said, would you consider doing that? And I said, well, let me think about it. I was at a very successful firm. I loved my job. I loved the work, and I loved the people that I worked for. I definitely didn't want to burn any bridges there. And so it took some time, but ultimately he's like, yeah, I've got to hire somebody or have a partner. And the only partner I'd want would be you. What do you think? And it was just the right time, and a good timing for my family. I approached the guys that were my partners at the old firm, and to their credit, they were great about it, supported me, and we maintained that relationship. In fact, we worked together, co-counsel on cases all the time. And that was important to me to not burn that bridge, because I really did love those folks. And so, but Hilverda McRae just kind of blossomed, and we were like, okay, well, what are we gonna, are we gonna get like the fancy books and wear a suit and tie every day? Is that the kind of firm we're gonna be? And we both looked at each other and went, no, hell no.
If you go on your website right now, that's what it is, right?
It's being changed. We're not too active on changing the website, but we have taken new pictures, because I have clients that look me up on the webpage and then come in and meet me, and they're like, wait, is this the same guy?
Right. I was expecting your webpage to appear something very similar to the Duluth Trading Company.
Which would be a really good look, even.
Yeah, that might be. We should look into that.
I figured I was going to see more kayaking, camping, and fishing photos than I was going to see the typical courthouse walk photos.
Right.
Anyway, we decided we wanted a few things. One was our families always came first, and that wasn't just for me and Steve. That was for everybody, all of our employees. And we told them out of the gate, there's a kids play or a sporting event, or you need to take them to whatever they've got going on in their lives. Great. We never say no to that. And that goes for me and Steve. Even if we're swamped with work, we got to put our families first. And the other one was we wanted to just do it our own way. We're not very orthodox when it comes to law practices in the state of Idaho. Most of them are fairly conservative, and they got the leather books on the walls and that sort of thing. And I don't know if you saw the pictures of the conference room lately, but we just covered it with skateboard decks and guitars. And we call it the boardroom because of the skateboards and fretboards. So, anyway,
that's very
my office, you can't really see very much, but it's covered with concert posters and music. And Steve and I play in a band together, and we're kind of goofballs. We love doing silly, funny things, and kind of letting people know that the law isn't all stuffy. And you can be a good lawyer and not necessarily just have the look of a slick guy in a suit working in some big firm. And I think that's why we hit it off so well with you guys, is you're similarly minded.
Yeah. We're all, and that's what people understand is that you and Steven, kind of like Keith and I, and Orm and Keith and I think we all have similar interests, because we see this as a business. Yes, it is a business that is piggybacked on a professional license, but at the end of the day, we're more relatable to the public because of our ability to we relax a little bit. And I've always said it. I think in this business, the way that you grow your client base is you have to be known as somebody who can calm that anxiousness. We see these people in their worst states.
Yep.
They don't know what's going on. They're anxious. And the first person to calm them down is the one who wins. Yeah. And I just find it hard to do that in a suit and tie. There is a crowd that would be calmed by a suit and tie. I think our clients find us relatable because we have fun. We want to do a great job, and the results drive it. And it's very clear from your reviews and your clients and talking, very successful, but that doesn't mean that you're not unrelatable.
Right. And for us, people are coming to see me, especially if it's a bad car wreck or something, a trucking accident, or their insurance companies are coming around. These are folks that are coming to see a lawyer probably for the first time. Yeah. And they're nervous. And I had a few times where I've go in to meet with folks like that, and I'm in a suit and tie, and it's bad. That's not me. It's not what they needed. And it was really kind of hard to build that relationship. I walk in like this, or more often with the band t-shirt on, which I have underneath, put on a nicer shirt for you guys. Yeah. So
you spruced it up.
Right. And people are like, oh, like you weren't, quite like what I was expecting. And I said, well, I feel like that makes people more comfortable. And they say, yeah, it really did. They tell me that they appreciated that it was a little less formal. And the people who want the suit, the people who want the fancy office and the leather-bound books and, all of that, probably aren't going to be happy with us anyway.
Yeah. Right.
And so trying to cater to those folks seemed like a fool's errand. Yes. And of course we've tried it. I think all of us have tried it at times to, what we're supposed to be. And so I'm going to try to be that. And what do we always come back to? It's always best to be yourself.
Yes.
And this is ourself. And most people related to that. Just on the phone with my mom a couple of hours ago, and she was telling some funny story about a family friend from years ago that had called her up because she had seen a picture of me online from a concert I went to recently. And she was laughing so hard because she said, I've got a long hair, bearded son who's an attorney who does that kind of work too. And I just wonder, don't their clients want somebody a little more clean cut? And my mom started laughing, and I said, Mom, clients love us. And she goes, that's exactly what she said. Well, their clients just love them. And it's not because we look a certain way. It's because it's who we are. I'm not a suit and tie guy. Yeah, I wear one if I have to go to court. Other than that, it just isn't me. And so, we can put on the show when we have to and go try a case and that, but even jurors can pick up on if you're trying to be somebody you're not. And so, it's just important for us to kind of do this and approach the law in our own way, even if that's different than everybody else. So
well, I think you said it best that jurors will pick up on it, because so whenever I was prepping for my trial about a month ago now, Devin helped me more nights than he didn't, that's for sure, in the lead up to it. And he said, look, man, remember you came from rural Vernon Parish and all this other stuff. You got to talk about, in the morning you were getting ready to go hunting and you woke up and all this other stuff, and basically telling a story of what not reasonable doubt,
circumstantial
evidence would have been. Yes. And he's like, that's you. I was like, that's not me anymore. Yeah, I grew up in that place, but that's not me anymore. And I was like, but I can do this, this, and this. He said, that's it. That's you. Be that. Do that. Yep. And so instead of telling a story about how I had my 4-wheeler load on the back of my truck and all this other stuff, it was more about, and then, it rained the next day. It was about how, I had to let my dog out the night before and things like that, as opposed to loading up my duck dog and things like that. So
each dog would be beat up by a duck. Okay,
this is true. I could not tell them that. I just told them it was my dog that I took out, not my 4-pound Pomeranian.
Right.
So I even remember I said, I let her out and I said, no, don't say her. No, don't let her know it's a girl dog. It's just a dog, okay?
Just dog.
Yeah.
That is great. Yeah, no, they really, people can pick up. I mean, we really are. People want a connection, and even if it's somebody that you're just meeting or you're just observing, like a jury or a juror would be, they want to connect. And when they don't feel that connection, often that's because they don't feel like you're being, truthful to who you are. You're trying to be something you're not. And that really puts people off. And, I'm guilty as anybody. I've tried it. I've tried to be slick. I've tried to be, whatever, because that's how I watched other people do it. But that was them.
Yep.
Not me. And I've just had better results with clients, with opposing counsel, with my family, you name it, when you're just yourself. And that was, honestly, to kind of circle back a little bit, a huge part of leaving the Mormon church was it got to a point where it was just no longer me. And I felt like I was just going through the motions because that's what was expected of me. And I don't feel like that is a good way to practice faith either. And so it really boils down to be yourself, be who you are, and help the people you can when you're doing that. So
now you are in a similarly rural area as we are, and there are some. You go to these conferences, you see all these people from Chicago, New York, Atlanta, Dallas, other large places, and they market such niche areas of the law. But I'll tell you one thing that brought it home was we all talked about all the stuff that comes through your door that you don't do. That you learn after your first year you have to say no to.
Yes. For sure. Turning down you can't take everything, and I don't know if it's a rural thing or not, but sometimes you have some crazy walk through the door.
Yeah. Hey, I remember being in Morehouse Parish. There was Morehouse Parish is just a real rural county to say. There's 28,000 people. And they would come to the district attorney's office. They said, my husband filed divorce on me. Are you going to be my attorney? And I said, well, no, I'm the assistant district attorney. They said, well, aren't you the attorney for us in this parish? No, ma'am, I'm the prosecutor. Well, you can't help me then? Because there was only 7 attorneys at that time.
Right.
In that whole county or parish.
Yeah.
And so you ever had, what's the cases that you want to say yes to that you've said yes to, but you should say no?
Divorces.
Yes. It's always that person from high school or that you knew at the restaurant and you said, oh, it's going to be uncontested.
Famous last words.
Uncontested is a funny one. Because it's always contested.
Right.
So we just developed a policy of flat no to that in a case of experience, particularly Mormon divorces. I don't know. That's a big thing, and there's a pretty significant population in our area of Mormon folks. So, we've got some friends that have the stomach for it, and they do it. And everyone that walks in the door, we say, nope, go to those guys. We're not doing that.
I can remember when we had a few bad months or something, you'd say, I mean, it is $2,500. So, I mean, you take it. And man, that's the hardest $2,500 you ever worked for in your life.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a temptation as new in the field to do it.
Yeah. I don't know, though. Sometimes taking the crazy stuff can be fun, too. We've done a few here recently. I've got a really fun one about it was this little lady from a town just outside of ours that's way smaller than ours called Kimberly, Idaho. And she had a little tiny cash-only bar and had like 4 regular customers. And some sweet-talking salesman comes through town. I'm leaving out a lot of details, but presses her on a credit card processing machine, going, hey, you take credit cards, you'll get a lot more business and people. And she's like, yeah, but I've just always been cash. I don't want the fees. I don't want to deal with it. Long story short, he says, hey, you can try it out for a month, see if you like it. And if you don't, we'll take it back and keep just taking cash. I'm like, all right. Well, lo and behold, she gets it. The thing never really works. She hates it. They actually had her send like 3 different ones back to try another one to see if they could get one to work.
Just
And
in 1 month.
ultimately, she's like, "Listen, guys, this is not working for me. I just want to cancel. I'm just going to be a cash bar." And they're like, "Oh, you can't cancel. This is a 4-year lease on this, and we're going to be drawing this from it." It's like, "You told me I could cancel." Like, no, it says what's in writing. And so she just stopped paying them because she didn't even have the machine. She had sent the last one back for not working again, but they're still trying to take money out of her account for this. And so my boss, my old firm, he was kind of he knew her kind of because he'd go out and drink there every once in a while. And so she mentioned it to him, and he said, he came to me, "What can we do with this?" And so I sent a letter saying, "Listen, you guys screwed this up. Don't mess around with this lady anymore. Quit trying to take her money, and we'll be fine." And they called us up and told us to pound sand. She owes this money, and if she had actually closed the account that they were drawing money from so that they wouldn't take any more. And we said, "Listen, just leave her alone." This was at that point not a case that we were looking to take. It was just sticking up for somebody who was nice and needed some help. And they just kept telling us, how terrible we were and that we weren't honoring the agreement. And all of a sudden, our client gets a notice that she has been sued in the community court for Lower Manhattan.
No good favor goes unpunished.
And we're like, what the hell? And sure enough, in the tiny print on the contract, it said they had a jurisdiction, a venue choice, and it was the community court of Lower Manhattan. And they basically had this attorney who sat in a basement and processed hundreds of these when people stopped paying for these machines. And nobody's going to show up in Manhattan. Right. And so we're like, well, what do we do? And thankfully, even though we're in a small community, we belong to various organizations, like the one where we got to meet you guys. And some other ones that deal more specifically with our line of work, and they're national organizations. And so even though we're small town practitioners, we know some folks. And called up one of the Michael Jordans from
they're calling a favor for your bar tab.
Yeah,
huge plaintiffs firm in New York that works on multi-million-dollar cases on a regular basis, right? We said, "Hey, you guys do us a favor. Can you go down to this hearing?" To their credit, I mean, this guy was like a legend in his in the trial lawyer community, just because of the number of verdicts he's had. And he'd been around forever, and so he goes walking into the community court of Lower Manhattan, and the attorney had damn near soiled herself. What was happening, and then they're like, "Yeah, we're going to oppose this," and she'd never had anybody oppose it before. It was all default, right? So all of a sudden, he showed up there. The judge set it for discovery and a later trial, and all of a sudden, they're calling us, going, "Hey, we'll walk away." And you were right. We should just walk away from this. We're like, no, too late. And we ended up uncovering all their practices across the country, and the Better Business Bureau complaints and the consumer protection complaints against this company across the entire country were unreal. I think we provided something like 250,000 complaints to the court from these folks to just go, this is their pattern of practice. And they ended up paying Our Lady well enough that she no longer had to run a cash-only bar, and she packed up and moved out of Idaho. And so it turned into kind of a fun one where it was like, all right, normally I probably would have said, listen, just, see what happens. But
Right.
it turned into some fun. And it didn't end up making the attorneys a bunch of money, but it was pretty significant to her, and it was just fun. Sometimes it's fun to do the fun, crazy thing when it's just the right thing,
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's the it's the David versus Goliath story.
Yeah, it literally was in that particular case. These folks just had a system that was designed to, destroy these people and take their money, and they did it all across the country. It just happened to happen in Twin Falls, Idaho, or Kimberly, Idaho, we were able to put a stop to it. They shut down. They no longer operate because their scam got called out.
That's funny.
That's incredible.
Yeah. I can't tell you how many times I've taken payment I had a woman who used to clean my house, and that was her payment each month. It's things in a rule or practice that people look. I don't think I paid for a yard mowing for 2 years.
I've gotten paid in potatoes. I've gotten paid in, I have our town. We have a small community college here, and part of it is or they have a refugee center. And so Twin Falls is a refugee state where city where they'll send people who are, have applied for asylum. And back in the 90s, we got a pretty heavy Baltic population, Bosnians and that sort of thing that were, fleeing the war. So we have a kind of an interesting, for a small little agricultural community, we have some diversity that probably you wouldn't expect. But later it became folks from the Middle East that were fleeing and coming here from Iran and Iraq and that sort of thing. And I handled a matter for a boy, and the mom was just so grateful that once a month for, 3 or 4 years, she'd come in with I don't even know what it was. It was almost like baklava that she had made, a little bit different, and it had some nuts and honey and real flaky pastry. She'd come in with that and some other things that had like dates and stuff in them. They were delicious, and I look forward to that stuff. That probably doesn't fly in a big city, but she was just so grateful, and it wasn't that significant what we did for her son, but to her it meant everything. And anytime she made a batch of sweets, she brought some to the office.
Yeah.
I used to, whenever I was in Morehouse Parish, I'd answer questions for people who were getting divorced. They'd come in, they'd ask me stuff. They'd see at a restaurant, I'd answer a question. They'd say, "Oh, well, thanks." And they call me, I got a freezer out by the shed that's got sweet corn in it. Just stop by and get you some bags. And so I'd have bags of corn. I'd have pea gumbo, all kinds of stuff. Yeah. It's just how it works. It's different. It's different in these rural areas. These people are sometimes monetarily poor, but asset rich. And then sometimes you just do things and say, tell 10 people to hire me if they need something.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Most of our cases come from folks in this town who know us either from, having done work for them, or more likely just stuff we do in the community. And that's a nice part of being in a small community is people know who you are. And I'll get calls and say, well, you don't know me, but I know so-and-so. And they said, I needed to call you.
I found out that banks don't notarize things for free anymore. A lot of banks don't. Remember, they used to.
Yeah, they used to.
But they don't. So I just started notarizing stuff for free because they need income affidavits for a lot of things.
Yeah.
And that's an advertisement that exists here that doesn't exist in other places. Yeah. Is just people come down to my office all day long and I've got 4 or 5 things to notarize. and they now know the housing offices will tell them, oh, you need an affidavit that you're living here. And so they come down and see me and they give them my name. And, I tell those people all the time, I say, look, I like to notarize your stuff, but I prefer to get your bankruptcy or car wreck. But that's how it works in these rural areas.
Absolutely. It's funny because we have the same experience in our office.
Yeah.
Tell people we're notaries. Come on down. You need something notarized? Come on down.
The fun story of the notary was I took the Louisiana bar exam, which is one of the more difficult bar exams. It was back then. It was the 3 days, 8 hours a day, all essay. There was no. It's not what it is now, and it was a little bit harder to pass as the last version of it. So when I got done with the bar exam and I'd passed on the first try, where it had a 46% pass rate, somebody said, hey, the notary exam's just as hard as the bar exam. So I was sitting there one day and an older attorney said, hey, you have your notary ID? I said, nah, I don't need that thing. I'll never need it. About a year later, I was sitting there and one of them said, hey, can you help this new lawyer fill out his notary paperwork? You just have to submit your bar license. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, I probably want one then. But if they were going to make me take an exam for it again, I didn't need that.
Another exam.
Yeah, all you do is sign a piece of paper and send it down.
Yeah, my wife's from Texas, and she loves it here, but she always hints, Texans, they always want to go back to Texas if you get out of it. I said, I'm not taking another exam. Sorry, honey. Like, we're not doing more exams. We can go sometime, but I can't be a lawyer. So
Texas has it down to a fine art. They will allow anybody who is an attorney to get rest of process there. They're just going to fleece you for cash every year.
Yep.
It is 100%.
And the CLE credit.
And the CLE credit. That's the money grab, is they want you to take their CLEs and tender them about $5,000 for that application.
Yep.
And every year it's the same one that I always forget to renew.
Don't they require you to take like their CLE through their state bar association?
You do it. You have to take their CLE through their bar association, which has a nice novelty fee of about $100 for every hour.
Yeah.
And just to make sure that if your state's hours do apply to them, they require 3 more hours than any state. So at minimum, you're going to give them $300.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
You're not avoiding that one.
Yeah. No way to avoid them. Everything's bigger in Texas, including their fees and requirements.
So what are some of the community events that you get involved in that get your name out there, that helps the community be familiar with you guys?
Yeah. So it used to be that we did zero marketing of any kind. We do our stuff, but we didn't really advertise. But the first year Steve and I were partners was kind of just before those like ridiculous Christmas suits were kind of a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
Seen them on something and we're like, we should get some of those. That'd be fun. And so we ordered them on the web and they showed up and we're like, well, let's, we got these stupid suits. Let's, we put together a few little gifts and wore those stupid suits on at Christmas time and went around to some clients and other lawyers and the court and, made a few stops. And we were floored how well it was received. And people just loved it. They ate it up and they're like, please come back next year, whatever. And so we kind of morphed that into, we called it the Hilverda McCrae Elves. And every year we'd pick a theme and we'd do some really ridiculous stuff. I think the next year we were the Christmas rappers and we had all Christmas themed, like 80s hip hop. Like we had a boombox and like Christmas rap songs on it. Yeah. We had chains and whatnot, and we went around to everybody and handed out wrapping paper.
Yeah,
because we were the Christmas rappers, and they loved it. And especially with that one, the suits were funny and people loved it, but that one they're like, man, this is clever. And I can't tell you, we did no other advertising, but we would get calls all year long of, are you guys the lawyers that dress up at Christmas time? And we're like, yeah, that's us. And they're like, I have always said, I don't need a lawyer, but if I ever do, I'm calling those guys.
Yeah.
And so we've dressed up like the old timey judges and like declared people naughty or nice.
Yeah.
Hands out bags of coal. We did a punk rock Christmas once. We had like green and red leather jackets on, and I had a big mohawk, and we actually played guitar and drums when a little Christmas carol. And that stuff, we had people calling our office going, hey, how do we get on the list for them to come to our office?
Yeah.
People that we didn't know. And it was just, again, it comes back to, it was just us being ourselves. We're goofy. And we like doing goofy stuff, and people loved it. But we also, I've been, pretty heavily involved, especially when my son was a little bit younger in coaching soccer and the club soccer program. Steve's always been involved with youth and working with youth in the community, that sort of thing. And then we've we've helped put on a farmer's market. I point back here, that's Main Street right behind me in our little town, and got a farmer's market up and going, and we were participating in that. And the town comes down on Saturday morning and buys produce and crafts and whatever else, and
it's right in front of your office.
It's right in front of our office, and we like that stuff in our community.
Yep.
And so it's kind of like putting your money where your mouth is. Help out and for the stuff you want. And we have we kind of like again, it's helping out the little guy. We've had a bunch of experiences where somebody's getting picked on by a bigger source or more powerful source. We've jumped in on that, pro bono.
Yeah.
We had some folks that worked at the libraries in the last few years, and they were just getting lambasted because they had gay books in the library, and that was inappropriate, and it was going to make all the kids gay in our town, and they were just going after the library, and the library, to their credit, stood their ground, and they were appealing it to like the city council level. We're like, screw this, and so we went and talked to them. We showed up at the hearing. We started presenting things and telling them, hey, you can't, force them to take down a pride thing from just constitutional standpoint, but also like, it's just not the right thing to do. And we were successful in that, but we also at the same time said, we also brought a donation for the library, and it was John Oliver's book about the gay bunny in the White House.
Yeah.
Modeled after Mike Pence. And so we said, we've got, 20 copies of this book to donate to the library because, and we said this, the community that was opposing these things would go in and they would check out all the pride books or gay books, hold on to them so they wouldn't disappear. Or they wouldn't be able to be checked out. And so we said, if you check out all of these 20 copies, please let us know. We will buy more until you have plenty in stock. And all of a sudden, the conservative groups that were trying to push these things stopped doing it. They didn't attack the library this year during Pride Month. We've had people, during Pride. We've had, drag show things that are all the rage now that people lose their mind about. And we've had people actually making death threats to the businesses that are sponsoring these things.
In Twin Falls, Idaho.
And we were actually they went after this one group that put on a very, very tame, very, very family friendly. It was rated G, but they were drag performers, and they did little like game thing, and it was great. I took my kids, and there was a lot of kids there that had never, realized that there was people that maybe like them out there, and so it was a huge thing. But the opposition to it was outrageous. So we jumped and we got the police involved. The police came down, to their credit, and stood guard outside, and then the online abuse got to be so bad that they actually attacked the restaurant that it was at. Not to the point of, hey, this is wrong, or I don't think you should be doing this, but you're all pedophiles and we should kill you all. And, that for me, that crossed the line.
Right.
So we went after them, and the business owner was upset, but, she was like, well, I don't care. They can make these threats. I'm not going to give up helping out these people that need help in our community. And we said, yeah, great. So we tracked down some of the folks, served them with demand letters, and said, you've committed defamation, both, civilly and potentially criminally. Idaho has a criminal defamation. I don't know if Louisiana does, but you can resolve this in one of two ways. You can donate $25,000 to the business, or settle it for $25,000 to the business, or $2,000 to Queer Productions Limited, the group that puts on these events at Pride and that sort of thing. And obviously they're going to choose the lesser of the two.
Mm-hmm.
But then they had to make out a check and donate to the organization that they were calling pedophiles. And on top of that, we made sure it said it had to be payable in a certified check or a cashier's check.
Yes.
The bastards had to go into the bank for them to have a check made out to Queer Productions Limited, and then bring the check down and give it to us so we could pass it along to the group. We love stuff like that, and it's huge as far as letting people know. Even like I don't have a huge stake in drag events. Like I don't love them. I don't dislike them. I don't have a ton of feelings. I appreciate that people do, and it's a way for people to express themselves and to communicate with their community. But if you're going to start picking on these, on the little guy, we want to be there for you. And to our community's credit, even people who maybe don't enjoy drag at all or don't want, or don't participate,
are going to take their kids.
They recognize that we're standing up for what is right, and they respect that. And we get a lot of people that come up to us and say, "Hey, you're the guys that did this for that group," and they're like, "I don't have any gay kids, or I don't have any trans kids, but that was the right thing to do," and it's huge, and we love doing it. It gets us. I mean, one, we have the ability to do it. We're very privileged in our education and our financial standpoint and everything else that, part of me believes I've got some sort of obligation to help out where I can. But two, it feels like you're doing the right thing, and that's never the wrong thing.
Yeah. I always tell people, make the good human choice.
Yes.
Yeah. It's just easy in life. You can have ideological differences, but it doesn't mean prohibition. We live in a world where in a great country where the forum exists to be able to have differences, but it doesn't mean that either side's right or wrong. It just means that it exists.
Yeah.
And I tell people all the time, they always ask, they say, how can you do certain things in law? I said, look, I'm just here to protect that we have this forum. It doesn't mean that I'm participating.
Yeah. And
we're just gatekeepers to make sure that the forum still exists.
Yeah. I really struggle with the divisiveness that comes, and it's us against you, it's dividing. I grew up. I've always kind of been a hippie, very liberal hippie. And even though I grew up in a very conservative religion, I kind of always stuck out that way because politically I've always been fairly liberal and fairly, and that was always different. But I have friends that I'm very close with that believe very differently than me when it comes to politics or some of those ideological things. And they're some of my very best friends. And they have people come to them and say, well, Brian thinks this about, politics or religion or whatever. How can you be friends with him? And they're like, Brian is a great guy. And you know what? He respects my ideas and I respect his, even if we don't necessarily think that they're, that we agree on those. And I pride myself on that. And I'm proud to have friends like that stick up for me when somebody says, well, he's different, you shouldn't like that. And they say, no, we can have these differing ideas. We can have, and that makes it great. And I think it goes along exactly what you're saying. It doesn't mean you're participating, even if you disagree with something. It doesn't mean you're participating, but you're hearing them out. You're respecting them. And that's huge. We've lost a lot of that.
Yeah. I was about to say that's something that the world has lost, it seems, or at least maybe our nation has lost.
Look, I've been at it 12 years. I felt like when I came in, we were at the end of the dying traditional firm. And it's just always, and you similarly, and Stephen, and even Keith was 3 years behind me. I feel like the model is that we're more service oriented, and we're more community oriented than we are worried about building this professional barrier of the lawyer who is disassociated from the client or the realities of what clients go through. And I think what now is the dominance in the legal world is breaking that barrier down to establish that the attorney has rapport with the client and the troubles of the client. Look, I do bankruptcy, expungements, I've done divorces, I've done criminal law. And I think every person who's an attorney probably has a great chance that they could have been that person sitting on the other side. And I think the barrier is that we do our job in a professional way, but we also do it in a manner in which an individual understands that you understand what's going on with them.
That was a huge driving point in finally getting our podcast up and going. Was we had a box of equipment that literally sat in the office for like 3 years. We're like, we got to get this done. We got to do it. And it really came down, what finally got us going on it was we need to make the law approachable. I don't think a whole lot of lawyers will watch our podcast and learn anything, but people will see that, this is how the law works. This is how lawyers can be, and it's a very approachable manner to do it. And because for it 100%, I love the way you said it, Devin, it's a service profession. We are providing services to people. We are serving them because we don't exist without them. We're not providing really any products, with the exception of we write a will or something. I don't know. But really, we're providing a service. And the law has gotten so far away from that, I feel, especially big cities, big firms, that sort of thing. It's money. It's how many clients can we get? Can we get the big clients? Can we get the big cases? And when you start chasing that, you lose the service aspect. And that's not what I signed up for. I mean, I started this by saying I loved my job when I worked for an insurance company. I really did. And when I was allowed to do it, I felt like I was doing a lot of good. I was serving people. I was helping them through some of the worst stuff they've been through in their lives. And then I just realized I hated insurance companies when they would tell me like, we think that case is worth X amount, and you're right on your evaluation of it, but we know she's a single mom, so let's start at 60% of that. And it was because she needs the money. That was the straw that broke the camel's back for me. I went home that night and told my wife, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to take the LSAT and go to law school. And I don't want to work for insurance companies. I had lots of offers from big firms that represented insurance companies because I had really great experience in that they wanted, but I didn't want to do it. And as luck would have it, there was a firm here that was really, at the time especially, was one of the best in our state in fighting with insurance companies. And they called me up and said, hey, you want to work in your town? I mean, literally, guys, it fell into my lap. And I consider myself very, very lucky because of that, very privileged because of that. I get to be in my town. I get to do the work that I want. And that's it for me. I mean, there's some nice benefits to doing this work, financial security, and some of those things. But that underlying stuff has to be there, or else the money, all that other stuff doesn't mean anything.
Right. I think it always gets summed up, and I always tell people this. I say, the many things I've ever done, and this is the best career I've ever had. I get to help people and have fun. It's
100%.
It's only two things I ever wanted to do in life, probably. And that's not different than what your clients do. I find historically my clients get in bad positions because they want to help people and have fun.
Sometimes it goes one way, sometimes it goes another way.
Right. That's right.
You don't know until it happens. So.
The concept is the same. Sometimes the path there is less constructive.
No, that's 100%. In fact, when Keith said the one question we will ask is, what do you want your legacy? I was like, it's got to be some form of, helping people out and having fun doing it. It's as simple as that. I think that's what drives us.
I think that brings you to Keith's question.
Yeah. So, I mean, With that, expand on that. What is your citizen effect going to be? How are you going to leave your space or spaces that you're in a better position than you found them?
Yeah, so I think for us, the big thing is going to be helping out people who need help. Helping out it's a David and Goliath thing, guys. We are always going to be on the David side. That's just who we are. And so we want our community to recognize us as the guys who stick up for what is right. Hopefully that inspires them to do the same, to stick up for what is right, and sort of have a ripple effect. I certainly know there have been people in my life that encourage me to do the right thing, and do what is right, even if it's not financially a smart move or what you expected. So hopefully we can provide that same sort of effect in other people in helping them see, okay, this may not be the best thing for me personally, but it is the best thing for the community, and so I'm going to do it. And you got to have fun doing it. Be yourself and do it. We have fun doing our goofy stuff. We have fun playing in a band. We're known as the music lawyers, things like that. And again, benefit of a small community. But hopefully we can spread a little joy doing things like that, and we can make people's life better by helping them out. And hopefully they in turn help others out.
Well, look, I know that you don't know this. None of the viewers know this, but this year, May 24 of 2024, will be the first Erase My Arrest Whiddon EDC Vegas conference.
Yes.
We need Hilverda McRae there.
Yes, we do.
McRae will be there. We will be there.
Yes.
Like, I'm not going to any classes, you guys, but
the thing is that the classes are during the day, but you got to be able to sleep sometime. So attendance for the class, I imagine, is going to be very low.
Yeah.
So
it's more about that 7 p.m. to 5:30 a.m. A celebration of life.
Yeah. That's the networking part.
Yeah, the networking
on my calendar right now.
That's right.
Okay.
We're slowly gaining supplies as my mailman probably has no idea what's going on. Why neon rope for a backpack is being delivered. And why is this guy buying all this fluorescent colored gear from a company called Bang Miami?
Yeah.
Delivered very discreetly, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, the gym wardrobe has really morphed in the last month. So
let me tell you something. If you want to work out alone in Louisiana, wear a fluorescent tank top to the gym. Nobody offers you tips. Or not any of the tips you're going to get in the gym. Thankfully, there will not be photos to verify that, but I can tell you.
No, that's great. Yeah.
Look, I showed up at Keith's house one day in that outfit, and I don't even think he was going to open the door for me. I think he was more surprised it was unlocked.
Oh, shit. That's
So shout out to Lunchbox. Make sure that you use our special code to get 10% off your lunchbox.
Yeah, and Bang Miami, who supplied me with shorts that were so short that the guy who came over to fix my AC said, "I'm sorry, I caught you in your underwear, sir."
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah. But we're doing it.
Yeah.
Conference. So.
Yeah. All right, Brian. It was good, man. It's good to see you.
Absolutely.
Good to see you guys. Love you both, and say hi to your families. And let's stay in touch. But we'll be in Vegas.
Absolutely. Well, I'll text you about Vegas.
Yeah.
All right. See you, Brian.
Bye.
Yeah, take care.